Hey everybody, I'm Rick. This is the D-Pad, and I wanted to do a little review talking about WandaVision. The first couple episodes got released this past Friday. The first two episodes of the first entry into Phase 4 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and I thought it was pretty neat. I figured it'd be pretty cool to talk about it for a few minutes. I'm probably going to do a short little thing like this after each of the episode releases. I think it's a kind of a neat way to kind of follow along as it goes. I've decided, for the sake of aesthetics, for this that I'll go with a black and white look as well. This is not artificial. I have actually very carefully painted every part of my body gray and painstakingly destroyed all of the video games and things in the background to make sure that it's nice and gray as well. So if you aren't familiar with the kind of premise, I guess the there's some like background information that kind of goes into WandaVision. So if you haven't been following along in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the most basic way that I can describe this is Wanda Maximoff is a woman who has been given these really weird reality warping powers. And she fell in love with I guess a robot man. I don't really know how to describe him, but Vision, who was created in the same movie that Wanda first showed up in, Avengers: Age of Ultron. And the events of the last movie that they were both in, Avengers Endgame, resulted in the death. Actually, I'm sorry, Infinity War, rather. Infinity War resulted in the death of Vision. And in Endgame, Wanda comes back furious and almost kills Thanos entirely by herself, Thanos being the big villain of the Marvel Cinematic Universe for its first 23 movies as kind of a collective. So we don't really know much about what happened to her after that, or anybody really. The world kind of goes back to normal-ish as best they can, as we see in Spider-Man Far From Home. But otherwise, we don't know a lot about the rest of the world and what's been going on. So when we get into episode 1 of WandaVision, we get this kind of cute, like old-timey sitcom, like 1950s sitcom intro. Like the full, it's like a song with like an explanation kind of thing of how they got there. It's a very like 50s, 60s, 70s way of doing sitcom intros, like giving you, because the idea there is the same as a lot of videos on YouTube. The first video, or rather any video, could be someone's first video. So give them a quick rundown so they know what they're getting into. This whole episode kind of has this I Love Lucy-ish vibe in particular. And I think the premise of the show is that each episode is going to feel really evocative of a specific decade and a few sitcoms in particular. And for this first one, there's a very strong I Love Lucy vibe. The whole episode kind of has the wacky sitcom about a married couple sort of flow to it. So the plot of the episode is, after an adorable little set of morning hijinks, we've got Wanda and Vision, who are trying to figure out why there's a date on the calendar, August 23rd, that is that has a big heart on it. Wednesday, August 23rd, which I was curious about it because I'm always kind of curious about when they do like calendars and stuff and these kinds of things. I went to look and it's like, okay, so August 3rd, 1950 is Wednesday. It doesn't happen again for like 11 more years or something like that. So like for the entire 50s, it's just 1950. It is, however, also the same day of the week in 2023, which is the year that Endgame takes place in the final like defense of Earth. So it's kind of interesting to see them play with that. I'm curious if that's meant to be your first kind of hint, if you're like really digging for it. I don't really know. But the plot of the episode revolves around, they at first think, oh, it must be some special holiday for us or some kind of special celebration, and we just don't remember what it is. And you kind of get the idea that like, oh, it's meant to be like an anniversary or something like that, or maybe it's the day they met or something. And Vision goes to work. Wanda stays home and is like preparing for like, so she meets her neighbor Agnes, played by Kathryn Hahn, who is hilarious, and she is a great addition to the cast. The two of them, like, Agnes is showing Wanda like some of her magazine stuff, and it's all about like how to look sexy for your man kind of thing, because it's the 50s. And so that's what she's up to. While at work, Vision, who works for a company, and I'm being vague on purpose, and I'll come back to that, but he works for a company and realizes while he's there that, oh, his boss, Mr. Hart, is going to be coming for dinner with his wife. So failed communication, and then they show up, and Wanda thinks it's the anniversary thing, and silly hijinks about like misunderstandings and Sokovian traditions, and like, oh, we haven't made dinner, steamed hams, that kind of thing. It's very cheeky. If you do not like the humor of like 1950s sitcoms, like if you don't like, you know, those kinds of jokes and that kind of a setup, it's going to be hard to get into this episode, because most of it does. So it's playing an homage, right? Like it's paying homage to stuff like I Love Lucy, but it's also leaning into it really hard. Like Wanda starts to space out a little bit from time to time when stuff seems a little too strange. And there's a point where Vision at work, he finishes all his work and it's done, and he's like, wow, you know, that took a third as long as I thought it would. And he asks his coworker, he's like, hey, what do we do here? And he's like, oh, well, we're providing for our customers. And like, yeah, but do we like make anything? And the guy says, no. Like, do we buy or sell anything? Nope, we don't do that either. So there's kind of this like, because that's one of those things, and those older sitcoms especially, it didn't really matter what the job was. They often just wouldn't bother to say. It'd just be, I go off to work and I come back. For example, I really liked The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air growing up. I had no idea until literally yesterday that oh my God, Carl. No, not Carl. What the fuck? Uncle Phil. Oh my God. Jeez. Uncle Phil is a judge. He starts out as a lawyer, but is ultimately a judge a couple seasons in. I had no idea. Never really occurred to me that he was a judge. So like this, that became a thing more in like the 80s, going into the 90s especially. Like there was a lot more emphasis on like what is the job that they do, to the point where that was actually one of the early like satirical choices made by The Simpsons. Was, so Homer Simpson works at the nuclear power plant, but over time, he just kind of collects all these weird jobs that he does for like one episode, but they focus on the job when he does. So like it's kind of this neat addressing of some of the weaknesses of those sitcoms. I thought the heart thing was a cute quirk. Like they drew the heart on specifically so that like Mr. Heart's a heart in the thing. Fun, wacky hijinks kind of thing like that. We got Debra Jo Rupp, who probably everybody will eternally know as Kitty Foreman from that 70s show, playing Mrs. Hart, and she was great. She was actually pretty fantastic in that, including and especially her best moment in the whole thing was probably right near the end, as they're at dinner and they're kind of like, finally everything is about to be normal, and Mrs. Hart starts asking about like, so how long have you two been in town? When did you get married? What's your anniversary? Why don't you have kids? Like just a bunch of questions. Like, and sure, it's like, it's kind of the joke of like, oh, it's someone aggressively kind of like asking a bunch of stuff, but at the same time, it happens quickly enough that it's kind of a little uncomfortable, and then you start to kind of, there, like she seems to like zone out a lot. Like she's kind of looking directly into the camera and looks concerned and weird, and everything just grows a little dark, and Mr. Hart starts choking on some of his food, and rather than like the wacky hijinks kind of thing of like, oh, someone got up and Heimlich, ha, yay, instead he's just sitting there choking on it, and Wanda is just kind of staring directly into the camera, not moving. Vision is kind of like anxiously sort of looking at everybody but not doing anything. And Mrs. Hart is just kind of, so again, Debra Jo Rupp is laughing at first because it's like, ah, ha, ha, he's just playing a joke. Stop it, stop it, stop it, stop it, stop it, stop it, stop it. And says it over and over and over again. Keeps a smile on it. Kind of like, it adds this really dramatic darkness all of a sudden to this otherwise very light fare. The whole episode at this point is very, very light. They also bring in, so the whole thing is shot. I didn't even mention this. The whole thing is shot very much like a 50s sitcom. Wide shots. The angles never get more than like 45 degrees off of like dead center, because they're doing it like an old sitcom that had a live studio audience. So they would have, the audience is behind you, so you can't shoot in reverse. So they're going to try to shoot, through the fourth wall at that. But so for this, all of a sudden you get these angles that you were not getting before, and they're very low angles, dark lighting, high contrast, and like it just all of a sudden all of that is going on. And then finally, Wanda sort of snaps out of it enough to turn to Vision and say, "Vision, help him." And Vision, uses, so he has the ability, one of his main abilities in Marvel, in the movies at least, I think this is the case for the comics too, is he can phase through matter. He can just rearrange his own molecules to do that. So he phases through Mr. Hart's neck and pulls out the piece of steak or whatever and throws it away. It wasn't steak. They were doing breakfast for dinner. It was the joke of that particular scene. So sausage probably, and just kind of throws it away, and nobody mentions it at all. They're just like, well, that was a fun dinner. All right, bye. Like they just leave, and it's so weird and unsettling. But instead of referring to it themselves, Wanda and Vision also just kind of like, we are an interesting couple, and they just sit down and they have their little sitcom-y ending, and you get the little zoomy in thing at the end, and like that kind of stuff. But like as it's doing that, the whole shot is still pulling back. So you've got your iris of like the little thing to be like, oh, the end or whatever. But like the whole thing pulls back, and you see that it's actually on a TV. And like it's on a TV in like a modern setting kind of thing, and it's pulling back, and there's like a logo that's kind of on there. And I forget if this is the episode that it happens or not. I'll definitely talk more about it in the second one, but there's someone who is saying, so you can hear kind of distantly, actually, you know what? No, I'm going to talk. I think that's a second episode thing, so I'll save that for later. But yeah, so after you see this shot there, you get this very cool outro, and I call it that because like it's the kind of sequence that you would expect at the beginning of a show or a movie, but they played at the end, and it's this really incredible sequence of like 3D animated stuff using like the I don't know if they would be really pixels, but like the pixels of an old CRT TV, as like this big like kind of light and soundscape kind of thing. It reminded me a lot of the intros to the Netflix shows. So, Daredevil and Jessica Jones and all of those, like hyper stylized, really, really cool. But yeah, so that's kind of the rundown of the episode. I think that it's also, I want to say, I'll have to double check on this, but I'm relatively sure that the entire episode is in standard. So I don't know what to call it, right? Because standard definition means something different. Standard definition is like 480p. So like 40%, give or take, of a normal, the resolution you're getting this at is 1080p. 40p is a lot smaller. But so like not widescreen, standard resolution, I guess, which is still wrong. Standard aspect ratio, 4:3, until the very end when it starts to pull back, and then the screen kind of stretches back out and goes from there. But yeah, so the entire episode is shot, minus the kind of like opening sequence. The entire episode is shot in their house and in the office, and I don't think there's any other shots that go anywhere else. So it does kind of have this like almost low budget feel. A lot of the effects are intentionally done with lesser visual effects. Like if something's going to appear, they'll do like whoop and then freeze and then put something there and then snap back into it, and you can see the jump cut and all of that, which is very like very much more like Bewitched and I Dream of Jeannie, which are going to come up in episode 2. But there's a lot of like there's a lot of stuff that's being dangled from like fishing line and stuff like that to get certain effects, and or that's the effect they're going for. There are definitely some circumstances, especially in the second episode, where they are clearly doing like actual legitimate like green screen and techniques that would like erase stuff from the shot, but then it's being processed in a way that gives it this kind of, old-timey black and white feel. But yeah, I think it was a really interesting start. They also have a commercial. I didn't even realize, I forgot to mention, in the middle of the episode, and this might be a thing for all the episodes, they have a commercial break halfway through the episode where they do a toaster, and it's a toaster with the Stark Industries brand, which is interesting because, it was kind of the question of how much Tony Stark, well, not Tony Stark because he is dead, but how much Stark Industries and, that kind of circle are going to be in the Marvel Cinematic Universe anymore. Because I think Pepper Potts is running it at this point, and going from there, but we'll see how that goes. But yeah, it was kind of interesting that they would do there's John. We're going to have to do I'm curious if they're going to do more commercial breaks like that for the whole thing. They did another one in episode 2. Again, it was done like very in the style of the TV of the 50s. But one thing that was very interesting, the only color that you see in the entire thing is on the front of the toaster. There's a little light that I think is yellow at first. And I thought it was cool when they drop toast into it. It makes a little high-pitched, like the high-pitched whine hum thing that happens before like any of Stark's technology does something. But the light starts blinking red in the end, and I'm trying to remember if that's where a voice comes in or not. But again, I'll talk about that for the next one. But yeah, so I definitely would recommend checking it out. If you're a fan of the Marvel characters, there's definitely a mystery that's kind of getting started here. If you're a fan of like old time sitcoms, there is a good amount of like genuine 50s nostalgia, like sitcom tropes at play here. Even there are some that they play straight and some that they lean on, but they actually do a pretty decent job with that. And yeah, I think it was pretty solid. This was definitely like an establishment episode. Like it's setting up for everything that's going to come later. If you have Disney Plus, I think that's the only place it can be watched right now. It's not on TV. But we'll see. I want to say, and I guess I'll check this really quick. I want to say there's supposed to be 10 episodes of this overall. I don't know. I'll have to see if I can find. I think it was supposed to be 10 episodes for this one. They are, I think, 25-ish minutes. I guess it's more like 20 minutes, 25, because they have their like outro, and then they have like the full scale like Netflix style outro. So there's a couple of minutes on there that aren't necessarily. And then after that, they do something that they already do on the home video releases of all their movies, which is they have the credits for all of the voice cast for international dubbing. So there's like a good like 5 or 6 minutes on the end of each of these that isn't actually like episode. It's just like credits of various sorts. But yeah, I liked it a lot. I'm looking forward to the rest of the season. Let me know what you think were your favorite parts in the comments below. And in the next episode, I guess we'll be heading into a more Bewitched and I Dream of Jeannie style episode. And we'll see where things go from there. So, all right. See you guys later. Bye.